Hello friends, in this video we will talk about predicate logic. So before we formally see definition of predicates, let's understand the limitations of propositional logic. So consider these three statements. Statement 1 is all men are mortal. Statement 2 is some trees have needles, and statement 3 is x greater than 3. So with the help of propositional logic, we cannot express these statements. Whereas predicate logic can express these statements, as well as we can make inferences on these statements with the help of concepts of predicate logic. So let's understand formally what are predicates. So consider this binary predicate px comma y. We can also talk about unary predicate, let's say p of x, and in general we can talk about n-ary predicate where predicate will have n variables x1, x2, x3 up to, let's say, xn. So in all of this there are two parts. The first part is nothing but predicate p, which describes a relation or property, and the second part is variables, and variables can take arbitrary values from some well defined domain. The set of possible values of the variable of the propositional function is called its domain or universe of discourse. So this domain has to be specified whenever we talk about predicates. And sometimes from the context of the predicate statements, it becomes implicit what is the underlying domain. But sometimes we need to explicitly state it out. Let's say the underlying domain is set of integers or set of people or set of students and so on. So basically, what we are trying to do here is there are predicates, and as you can see, predicates are having variables. So we are going to assign values to this predicates, and after assigning this values, the predicates will be converted into propositions. And we already know that propositions are nothing but they are statements with truth value. So after assigning values to these predicates, the predicates will have truth values, so they will become either true or false. And this is one way of binding these variables. The second way is we can also use, instead of assigning values, we can also use quantifiers. So we'll see both the methods. So let's start with binding by assigning values to variables. So as I just mentioned, just like propositions, statements in predicate logic can will also have truth values, true and false. When we assign values to x and y, then p has a truth value. So after assigning values, the predicate will have a truth value. So consider this examples. Let p of x denote the statement x greater than 5. Then we can say that p of 10 is true since 10 is greater than 5, and we can say that p of 1 is false since 1 is not greater than 5. Similarly, we can talk about binary predicate q x comma y, where predicate is x plus y is equal to 9, and if we assign 3 and 6 to x and y, then the predicate is correct, it's true. But if we assign 6 and 4, then 6 plus 4 is 10 is not equal to 9, and hence the predicate is false. So now the second method for binding variables is nothing but quantifiers. So quantification express the extent to which a predicate is true over a set of elements. And there are we are going to consider two forms of quantifiers, namely universal and existential. The symbol for universal is this, right? This is universal quantifier and this is existential quantifier, and we'll read this as for all, right? Universal quantifier is nothing but for all, and this there exist or there is or for some, right? This will become more clear when we consider some examples. So let's start with universal quantification. So universal quantification of p of x is nothing but it's a proposition P of x is true for all values of x in the domain or in the universe of discourse. So let's say I'm writing like this: for all x P of x, and let's say my domain or my universe contains only three elements, 1, 2 and 3. Then the equivalent version of this universal quantification is nothing but P of 1 and P of 2 and P of 3. P of 1 conjunction P of 2 conjunction P of 3. So this is nothing but equivalent version of saying that P of x is true for all values of x in the underlying domain U. Okay, so let's consider one more example. And let's say we want to represent this particular statement: all the students of BTech MNIT CSE third semester have registered for logic in computing subject. And let's say one predicate is given to us. The predicate is P of x, where x has registered for logic in computing subject. So we can straight away say that for all x P of x, but at that time we must understand that the domain must be all the students of BTech MNIT CSE third semester. If that, so what will happen if we consider generic domain? Let's say instead of considering just MNIT CSE third semester student, what will happen if you consider this all the students of the institute, right? So let's consider this particular scenario. Well, let's say this is my U. Set U is nothing but my underlying domain, and my underlying domain contains all the students of MNIT Institute. And now I'm interested in this smallest circle. So MNIT students also contain a subset containing only computer science students, and within this particular subset there is one more subset which contains only third semester BTech CSE students. Okay, and we are interested in this particular subset only because we want to make this particular statement that only for BTech CSE third semester students, this only students of BTech third semester CSE have registered for this particular subject. So all we need to do is we need to restrict our domain. So instead of focusing on this entire U, our focus is on this smallest circle only. So in order to do so, what we can do, we can have one more predicate. Let's say the predicate is Q of x, where we will say underlying property is x is third sem BTech CSE, x is third sem MNIT BTech CSE student, let's say. And now we'll only talk about students for which this particular property, we'll only talk about students for whom this particular property is true, and then we'll say if this particular property is true, if this particular property is true, if a particular student belongs to MNIT BTech CSE third sem, then only that particular student means he or she has registered for logic in computing course. So, and this is true for all the students. So for all the dots, for all the students, we'll first check whether this Q of x property, whether the Q of x predicate is true or not. If it is true, then only we'll talk about P of x, and this will be the equivalent representation with the use of predicates and quantifier, universal quantifier for all. So you need to notice here that if I write for all x Q of x and P of x, then this is wrong. Why? Because if I write like this, that means for all the domain points, for all the students, they are MNIT BTech CSE third semester students, and they have registered for logic in computing subject. So this is wrong, right? So the correct answer for the given English statement, the correct representation is this. Okay, so let's continue. So the next important definition is counterexample. So and an element in the domain for which p of x is false is called a counterexample of for all x p of x. So we have already seen the equivalent representation for p of x for all x p of x. We have already seen the equivalent representation of for all x p of x. This means p of, let's say my domain is n plus, then it will be p of 1 and p of 2 and p of 3, so on. So whenever this particular predicate is false for at least one of the value from its domain, then definitely the entire equivalent representation will be false, because we are using conjunction here. So if any one of this p1 p2 p3 up to pn is false, then the entire predicate will be false. So let's consider this particular example. Let's say my domain is z, set of integers, and the predicate is for all x, x square is greater than 0. So z also contains 0. So for 0, 0 square is 0 and 0 square is not greater than 0. Right? So for 0, if I substitute x is equal to 0, then I will get this kind of statement. So 0 greater than 0, this is false, and therefore we can say it's a counter example for this particular predicate. So next important quantifier is existential quantifier, and the definition is there exists an element x in the domain such that p of x is true. So there exists x such that p of x is true. So this is nothing but existential quantifier, and the equivalent representation will be, let's say my domain contains only 3 elements 1 2 and 3, then straight away I can say either p of 1 is true, or p of 2 is true, or p of 3 is true, right? If uh, we can say at least one of these 3 is true, and therefore there exists x p of x is true. Okay, so let's consider one more example. Let's say the statement is like this: there is a student in the BTech third semester MNIT branch. Okay, so let's consider examples. So let's say the statement is like this: there is a student in the third semester MNIT BTech CSE branch who is from Kota, and let's say the predicate is like this: P of x says x is from Kota. So we can straight away say for all x P of x, but again here my domain is set of students of the third semester MNIT BTech CSE branch. Then we can write like this: there exists x such that P of x is true. So whenever we talk in the beginning, we had talked about the objective is to assign values to this predicate variables. So variables for which the values are already assigned, they are called bound variables, and the variables which are not bound, they are called free variables. And there are two methods for assigning values also. Either we can directly assign values, or we can use quantifiers. So with the help of quantifier also we can assign values to variables. So when a quantifier is used on the variable, the occurrence of the variable is said to be bound, and occurrence of a variable that is not bound by a quantifier or set equal to a particular value, then it's said free. So if variable is not set or not bound by any quantifier, then it is called free. So let's consider some examples, then this will become more clear. So let's say if I write like this: for all x p of x, y and z. So here x is bound because we are using universal quantification for x, and we are not setting any values to y and as well as z, and also we are not using any quantifiers for them, so therefore y and z are free. In the second statement, for all x p x comma 5 comma z. So here I am assigning a specific value to y, so therefore y is bound. Again I am using universal quantification for x, so therefore x is bound, and Z is free because for Z there is no quantifier, and also we haven't assigned any values to it. Okay, and consider this particular third statement where there exists Z for all x such that p of x comma phi comma z. So here as you can see, universal quantification for x, existential quantification for z, and we have assigned value 5 to a variable y. So therefore all the variables are bound in this particular case. So interestingly, the idea is whenever you use quantifier with predicate, then you will get proposition. So let's verify this. So let's say this is my predicate x is less than x plus 2, and my quantifier is universal quantifier in this particular case. And we actually know that for all x, x is less than x plus 2. This particular statement is true under this particular condition where my domain is nothing but n plus set of positive integers. So for all positive integers, x is less than x plus 2. That is the meaning of this particular first statement. And as you can see, this is nothing but my predicate, this is nothing but quantifier, and finally I am able to assign truth value to this particular entire statement, and which is nothing but true. And therefore by combining these two, I am getting a proposition because now I have a specific truth value associated with this predicate. Similarly, let's consider the second statement for all x, x is equal to 9. So this is again false because this is true only where when value of x is 9. For all other values, this is false. So in general, this is false. Similarly, for all x, x is equal to x plus 2. This is also false. So these three statements were corresponding to universal quantification. Now consider the next three statements. So again, the predicates are same, but instead of universal quantification, now we are using existential quantification. So there exists x such that x is less than x plus 2. So this is again true because this is happening for all the integers. So that means we can say it is also happening for at least one integer. That's the idea. So therefore it's true. There exists x such that x is equal to 9. Again this is true because for x is equal to 9, this predicate is correct. And if we talk about there exists x such that x is equal to x plus 2, this is not happening for any of the integers. So this is false, right? So as you can see, by changing the quantifier, the truth value may or may not change, right? For example, consider statement 3 and statement 6, that predicates are same and truth values are also remaining same even after changing the quantifier. Whereas if you consider statement number 2 and statement number 5, then again predicate is same, x is equal to 9, but by changing this quantifier, the truth values are also changed. So let's consider one more example. Some person in this class has visited the city palace Jaipur. Let's say this is the statement and we want to represent it with the help of predicates. So I am using two predicates here. First predicate c of x is that particular person x is a person in this class. V of x means x has visited the city palace Jaipur. So basically we are saying that some person, so there exists some x for whom c of x is true as well as v of x is true, right? So there exists x such that that particular person belongs to this class as well as he or she has visited the city palace Jaipur. So we can also use multiple quantifiers, or we can also nest quantifiers. So let's consider the very first nesting predicate px comma y, and we are saying for all x for all y px comma y. So that means this is true for all the pairs x comma y in the underlying domain. So it seems that we can represent this as for all y for all x p of x comma y. Let's verify this by considering, let's say again I am considering my set U as only, let's say my set U contains only three elements. Let's say U contains 1 comma 2 comma 3 only, and I am saying that for all x for all y p of x comma y, this is equivalent to for all y for all x p x comma y. So let's verify this. So let me start with this for all x for all y p x comma y. So the equivalent version of this is, I can say for all y p1 comma y is 2, and for all y p2 comma y is 2, and for all y p3 comma y is 2. So what I am doing here, I am just considering all the values of x. So therefore this conjunction is placed in, and this universal quantification is, so basically this universal quantification with respect to x is replaced with this conjunctions. And now we can simplify this one more time. So this is equivalent to, so if we consider the very first statement for all y p of 1 comma y, so this is equivalent of p1 comma 1 and p1 comma 2 and p1 comma 3, because three different values are possible for y. Similarly, we can simplify the second statement. We can say p2 comma 1 and p2 comma 2 and p2 comma 3. And similarly, we can also simplify this particular statement. So we can say p3 comma 1. So x is static and we are taking all the values of y. And now, since conjunctions are commutative, what we can do, we can write the same expression column wise. So first I will write down the first column, which is nothing but p11 and p21 and p31. Next I will write down the second column, which is nothing but p12 and p22 and p32. And next I will write down the third column, which is nothing but p13 and p23 and p33. And this is nothing but, if you observe closely, then this is nothing but for all y for all x p of x comma y, right? So we have shown that, so this is, I have just shown this for this small domain containing only three elements, but in general this is true. Okay, similarly for the very last nested quantifier, we can write like this: there exists x, there exists y, p of xy, this is equivalent to there exists y, there exists x, p of xy's. So what is the meaning of this there exists x, there exists y, p x comma y? So there exists some pair x comma y for which the predicate is true. That's the meaning of it. And if we consider second and third statement, then they look similar but they are not. So let's consider one particular example. Let's say I'm considering this particular predicate x plus y is equal to 0. This is my predicate p x comma y, and let's say my underlying domain is z. Okay, and now let's consider there exists x for all y p of x comma y. So that means there exists some x for all values of y for which p of xy is correct. So that means there exists some value of x irrespective of value of y, such that if you add x in y, then you will get 0. So this is certainly false, because now what will happen, we need to identify one integer, right? Because x belongs to this z, x and y both belongs to this particular set z. So basically we are talking about one integer. If you add that particular integer in any other integer, then your answer is 0. So this is false, definitely. But if I consider this, for all y there exists x p of x comma y, then I am saying that for all values of y there is some x, right? So now the x is not unique in this particular case. For each value of y there is some x, and x is different. X may be different, right? Such that p of xy is true. So that means if I substitute, let's say x is equal to minus y, then I am done, because then x plus y is nothing but x plus minus x, and then the answer will be 0, and which is actually correct. So if I, for this particular pxy, this particular statement is there exists x for all y p of xy, this particular statement is false. Whereas for all y there exists x p of xy, this particular statement is true. Hence definitely these two are not equivalent. Okay. And what is the idea of second nested quantifier? There exists x for all y. So that means you are talking about one value of x, let's say xi, and this value is associated with all other values, all the possible values of y's, let's say y1, y2, y3 up to yn. That's the idea of this second nested quantifier. Whereas in the case of third, what you are saying, for each value of y, for each value of y there is some x, right? Some value of x is associated. So that means you are talking about this kind of scenario. For each value of y there is some x, let's say xi, this y2 there is some, and now this xj may be xi or it may not be, right? We don't know, but this is happening. So these two are different, right? So from this it will become clear that they are not the same. Here we are saying that for all values of y there is some x, and here we are saying the same, we have one x, and that particular one x is associated with all values of y, and hence these two are not equivalent. Thank you. Subscribe to my channel for more videos.